This is Allison Corbin with Big Sky Economic Development, and today I'm joined by Billy Ruff, CEO and owner of Travel Cafe. And today we're going to talk about the PPP program, how Travel Cafes accessed it, and some of the lessons learned and information on the process. So thank you so much for being here today, Billy.
Thank you for asking me.
Yes. So let's start with just a little bit of information about what Travel Cafe does in case people aren't familiar with your business.
Okay. Travel Cafe is a travel agency and a meeting planning company. So we sell all different kinds of travel. So vacation travel, we manage corporate travel budgets, we do large groups, milestone type, multi-generational, and we also do meetings from start to finish. So food and beverage, audio visual, room blocks, entertainment, meeting space, all of that.
Great. So definitely one of the industries that's been really dramatically impacted by this COVID-19 disruption. So I know that you guys were really on top of getting the PPP program. You're one of the first businesses we heard that were successfully funded.
Yes.
So talk to me a little bit about what that process looked like for you, from going to your banker and what you needed and what you learned just to kick off applying for that grant.
So thankfully, I'm in a group, it's like a CEO group, but it's a group of travel agency owners and managers from around the United States that meet 3 times a year. They're very active in our association, which is the American Society of Travel Agents, that lobbied very difficult initially with the issues of COVID because our businesses were so severely impacted. We were an industry that was identified as the most impacted likely from the virus. So I right away contacted my banker, and I attribute much of my success to the fact that my banker kept us as a priority through the process. We kept close in touch. I got him the information he needed as soon as possible. And I think, made us one of his priorities to get the funds, and we did, and I'm so grateful to that.
So what were some of the pieces that you had to collect? Was it stuff you already had available? So just pulling those, or was there anything new that you had, information you had to collect for that?
Well, we were just in the middle of finalizing our taxes, and the tax returns weren't complete when I started the application, but I was able to get all tax returns for the last 3 years, personal financial statements that I updated, and then the payroll reports, those came from my accounting manager. So there really wasn't a lot I had to reinvent. However, it was quite a bit of coordination, and that has been my focus since the end of March. I remain focused on these loans and the PPP and getting the appropriate information.
Right. So how many team members do you have?
18 across the state.
Okay. So talk to me about how you approached, were your employees on unemployment? Like, did they get to that process, or have they not started that yet?
So we went through this something much like this, not at the severity in 2008, 2009.
Uh-huh.
And what we did back then was immediately we did a 20% reduction across the board. So basically everybody took a day off unpaid. That was not enough to sustain the business. So after the first week of that, we went to I guess I'd call it a furlough of 7 people out of our 18. And the balance of the team took then a 40% reduction in payroll hours. So we were down to 60%. At that point, everyone was able to get unemployment. So those who were completely laid off were able to secure unemployment at full levels. And those that were partially laid off were able to get unemployment to offset their lost wages. So thankfully, we went through that process on a very positive note.
Great. So once you got notice that you got the PPP loan, what did that look like? So did your banker call you, let you know you got it? Like, what was that kind of transaction to get those funds?
Yes, he sent me an email, and thankfully our business is in the Stockman Bank building. So it was a matter of going downstairs.
Yeah.
But we completed the papers on a Friday, and on Monday, by Tuesday, we had everyone reinstated. And we have retained everyone since that Tuesday, which would have been the Tuesday after April 10th is when we were funded.
Gotcha. And so for funding, did they just do an electronic transfer, or was it from the bank? What did that look like?
Yep, I signed the loan documents, and then by that evening, the funds were in our bank in an account earmarked specifically. We call it our payroll account.
Gotcha. And so everyone was back to work. How have you, what was the feedback from your employees on going back to work versus being on unemployment? We've heard some businesses struggling with that shift. How did that go for you with your employees?
You know, I think there are some people in my organization that probably benefited from the unemployment and the extra $600 a week, but they also knew the importance of coming back full-time to Travel Cafe in order to get the loan forgiven. The whole piece of that is keeping people employed. And so thankfully, I did not have to address those issues. I don't think there's maybe one or two that would have been affected at that level. A couple of our newer employees, you know, some of them haven't even been with us for a year. So, but they made the choice to come back, and thankfully I didn't have to address that. We also paid insurance premiums for some of the employees that were laid off in order to eliminate that burden for them and keep them attached to our business.
Gotcha. And so we've talked with accounting groups about this topic, but walk me through how you personally are documenting things and making sure you use money the right way so that you get it forgiven in the end.
So our accounting manager, Jennifer, has immediately started a spreadsheet, and she's counting for every penny that is being spent, and it's for payroll, interest, and we don't have a lot of that, rent, and utilities, and that's all we're spending the money on. And that's all being tracked in a spreadsheet. And we have a weekly meeting, so Jen and I talk about it every week as to where we are and how much further we have to go and things like that.
Great. When people are working through that plan of how they're going to deploy PPP, it sounds like tracking is going to be key. And you mentioned putting it in its own separate bank account. Were there any other thoughts or considerations that have been helpful to you in managing that, or just are those the two main things?
It's really just a matter of tracking. We're being very transparent with our team, letting them know that these funds are specific for this. We had to furlough for 60 days our marketing efforts, which is always a difficult decision because at this time we need to be marketing as much as we can, but the funds are not earmarked for marketing. And so in an effort to remain as lean as possible, we furloughed some items that the funds were not appropriated for.
So I know in some industries, they can put their employees back to work. And I'm sure you have some work that needs to be done, but you don't have people, booking travel or having events right now. So what are you finding as good strategies to engage your employees and find work for them that's going to be meaningful for your business in the future?
So thankfully, we are in an industry that there is a lot of learning to be had. And so every destination has a certification process. So we now have Switzerland experts and Mexico destination experts, and as well as our vendors, our third-party vendors, they have trainings as well on their products. So we spend our days learning more about travel and more about destinations. Additionally, rebooking travel today is very complicated. Airlines have offered waivers. Those waivers change on a daily basis. So typically, an airline ticket is valid, a canceled airline ticket is valid for 12 months after date of issue. Because of COVID, those expiration dates have been extended for 2 years. That's kind of unheard of in our industry. Additionally, there are waiver codes that have to be applied to those airline tickets that will be eventually exchanged. The tour companies and the cruise lines also are making exceptions. For example, if you cancel a cruise or a tour because it's been canceled, then you can get your money back. But if you cancel because you don't want to go due to fear of COVID, then you are receiving a future travel credit to be used normally for 12 months. And in many cases, that's been extended again for 2 years, understanding that people have concern about getting on airplanes or cruise lines or traveling. And so we manage that on behalf of our clients, and that is a big job. So we're spending a lot of our days managing what is out there, what travel vouchers are unused, how they can be used. So we're in pretty frequent contact with our clients.
That's great. I think it's a great point that you're looking to the future past this disruption, because I think, and I've heard a lot of businesses, it's like you're just so focused on today and how you survive today. So great feedback to, you know, be thinking when this goes away or when this is over or safer. I know this is a little bit outside of PPP, but because we have you here, have you heard anything from your professional organizations about the return to travel, or how that experience might change for people beyond just navigating rebooking?
Well, I think the silver lining, one of the silver linings from this is that you will see much cleaner airplanes, much cleaner cruise lines, and much cleaner hotel rooms. I think that is just an initial knee-jerk reaction, which in my opinion has been needed for a very long time. I believe that, well, I know that airlines are going to be a much smaller operation. I think many travel vendors are going to be a much smaller operation going forward. Some of the things that the airlines have talked about are not using middle seats on airplanes. Some airlines are actually talking about removing the middle seats. I don't know that we'll see that. Reconfiguring some coach seating arrangements. I've seen a little bit of that. I will tell you that cruise lines have ceased operations through June, and we see them cease operations further. Tour companies also have ceased operations, and airline inventory is down right around 90 to 95%. So it's a substantial hit. Indicators are that we will see some return to normalcy in September. Business travel, I believe, is going to be very much reduced. I think in the world of telecommuting or teleworking, we've all learned that we can accomplish business virtually more than we have in the past. I still believe strongly, however, that face-to-face is always best and in some cases necessary. So I think the travel industry is taking things slowly and in many ways being responsible. One example is Alaska. Alaska cruise product for 2020 has been completely canceled. That is a big deal because Alaska's season is so short. It's September. And so that is their season to make their revenue. And that is a big deal. There are some ground operators that are still operating in Alaska, but the cruise industry for the most part is not. What that means is Alaska for 2021 is going to be the inventory is going to be there, but it's going to be taken. A lot of the travel agencies are scooping up group space to Alaska. And so the Alaska season 2021, I think, is going to be very busy. Same with fall foliage and likely some European destinations.
It's encouraging to think of a time when things are going to be that busy.
Yep, it is.
Absolutely. So with the PPP program, the funding goes into June. So what is your, the strategy is to complete all of that using for allowable expenses so that you get a full forgiveness on that loan. And then kind of what is your strategy going forward, or what are you looking for from policymakers or potentially other SBA products to support you when that time is over?
Well, obviously we have no revenue right now. I mean, our entire revenue comes from the travel industry. So our 8 weeks of the PPP program ends at the end of May. I plan to be in close contact with my banker in regards to what the money's been used for, how much is there, how much is left. I applied for the disaster loan on March 27th, the day the site crashed, the SBA site crashed. So I am still waiting to hear back from that program. But if I were to say to the SBA or anyone else, you know, the travel industry is going to need further assistance in order for us to make it through September. And so the disaster loan is a up to $2 million loan with a 3.75 interest rate. That would be difficult for us to manage even with a year deferral. So we're still on that trajectory. And if given the opportunity, we will consider that. But further grants, and obviously we'll make cuts if we have to. We don't have to. But further grants and or low interest loans would be a lifesaver for us and everyone else in the travel industry as well. I mean, hotels, not airlines, they have their own programs.
Yeah.
Any
tourist
industry.
I
Recently learned that the DMCs were not given, the CBVs and the DMCs were not given assistance, which I found unfortunate.
Yeah, that is really challenging. So there's a lot of conversation, this isn't about PPP, but just in the tourism in Montana. And I don't know if you've been in part of that conversation, but any insights on that approach or strategy that you've heard?
You know, that also is challenging. I understand why the 14-day quarantine. I understand completely. It's just sad that Montana also will be affected by that. I have a lot of colleagues around the United States that I've been talking to a lot, and obviously Montana is very attractive to them right now because of distance, the small population in relation to the world, and it's a balance. I believe that there's some opportunities Montana could certainly be taking advantage of, but also understand the need to be safe. Safety has to be first, and again, I think that's a balance.
Absolutely. So any last thoughts on the PPP program? Encouragement to business owners who are starting on the path of figuring out their plan for using it. Any insights?
I would say just keep at it. I every day it was my focus. I worked very hard to not be distracted by other things around me. You have to stay focused on and fill out the application appropriately. You can't leave boxes unchecked, things unsigned. I read through the instructions in detail, and thankfully it worked for me. And I would just say it was a lifeline for us, and it's kept us here and in business. And I would just encourage you to don't get discouraged, just to keep at it.
Thank you so much, Billy, for your time today.
It was nice to see you, Allison. Thank you.